We talked about enhance, perturb, attract, excite in relation to creativity, and that's the last slide that we used. We're now moving on. We're going to be developing this theory, enhance, perturb, attract, excite, a theory of change, transformational change, referring back to Tuckman, who we talked about in an earlier section, which was form, storm, norm, perform, enhance, perturb, attract, excite. You can see the way they fit together now. Basically, then the basic process of change, enhance, perturb, attract, excite, the phase cycle, the 4 phase cycles, as we've talked about in parts 1, 2, and 3. That's a reminder. We're going to go one step deeper now. We're going to talk about the difference between evolution and revolution in change, and we're going to fit that into the model, and then that's as far as we're going to go. But I ask you to bear with us. We're going to go now. We're going to talk about evolution and revolution. So these are 2 strategies of change. Evolution is not well understood in management. Revolution is well understood in management. Management basically is all about revolutionary change, which is change that's driven. So what can we say? What's the difference between evolution and revolution? Well, revolution is about a goal, having a goal. Where will you be in 5 years from now, young man? That typical interview question, which some of you might find totally ridiculous these days, with the rate of change in your particular environment. It's very much an obsolete question of the 20th century, some people would argue. So revolution is goal orientated, so we're going to go through the difference between these 2, and then we're going to go a bit deeper into it. What else about revolution? Revolution is man-made. It's a man-made system according to a plan. It assumes that you can predict the future, or if you get all the information together, then you can make a pretty good kind of guess about the future. It's predictive. It's about designing a system, designing the future, planning the future, measuring progress. It's all about measurement, so it's all very linear, and it's basically about leadership, leaders setting the vision, and about managing, manos, the hands, the guy or the girl who's controlling the hands. People in that system are not paid to think. Only the people at the top are paid to think. They give you the vision and the direction, and you're expected to buy it and buy into it. Very much a 20th century kind of concept of management. But now if we look at evolution's got a totally different set of dynamics, and it's a different strategy altogether. If you look at natural systems, evolution essentially, where revolution drives towards a goal, evolution actually appears to avoid limits. In nature, you run away from things that are going to kill you. And it's all about avoidance. So revolution is about having a goal. That's a very control orientated. You're the boss, you're in control of that. Evolution is, I've got no control over this environment. I'm just going to avoid everything I don't want. People at Intel hate failure. They haven't got goals. They just hate failure. If you read Andy Grove's biography from Intel, that's what they say. They weren't driving towards a goal. They were just avoiding failing. So an evolutionary system then avoids limits. We'll talk more about that. It seems to anyway, even though it's not thinking. Sorry, Joe. Yeah.
I want to make an interesting observation on evolution from the French historian Jacques Attali. And he showed that there seems to be an instinctual evolutionary drive in humans to always go for more freedom. And this happens over thousands and 10,000s of years. So for example, why did we create machines? Well, because we want to have the freedom to not have to do the dishes anymore in the morning. We can choose to do the dishes if we want to, but we can also pop them in a machine and let the machine do that for us. It's also a reason why we have moved away from religions telling us what to think and states telling us if we don't accept that religion, we'll get killed. We want to be able to make up our own minds of that. And it's also a reason why we as humans have moved more and more to political forms of democracy. In general, we don't want anybody else to tell us how to think and how we should behave. We want to figure out for ourselves what the smartest way of thinking is. Now, some of you viewing could say, yes, but what about tendencies of dictatorship in this world, or of fundamentalism in all sorts of ways? Well, historically, there have been movements back, but historically that has never ever kept the evolutionary drive to more freedom to a halt. So that one is continuing, and I think that's nice to hear, that we're avoiding limits as a species. It's our natural way.
It's true. I'm also a very good dishwasher, by the way. So avoiding limits. We'll talk more about that. How does nature then do that? Okay, trees aren't thinking. Okay, but they seem to avoid other trees. They seem to avoid brick walls. How do they do that? Well, they do that by constant experimentation. In nature, nature throws out experiments all the time. It throws out, that's the process of evolution. Evolution is nature's way of exploring. Experimentation, is nature's way of exploring. She throws out experiments, and anything that works is successful, and anything that doesn't, it kills. Nature is totally indifferent to the outcome. If the Amazon rainforest becomes a desert, nature doesn't care. A desert to nature is as natural as a rainforest. Constant experiments and constant experimentation is nature's way of dealing with change.
And I also want to add with that, for humans, but also for animals, this means having guts. I mean, just think about Paul and Marie Curie, who invented the X-rays, who found out about the X-rays. I mean, they spent their lives finding that wonderful technology for us, but at the same time they died because of that. Yeah. And think about all the ancestors who tried out different foodstuffs and who are not amongst us anymore because it killed them. But at least it told the rest of us, don't eat that berry.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And it also told us, oh, that berry is actually very tasty when you put some vanilla ice cream on it.
Yeah, it's good for you. And you don't get scurvy if you eat that yellow thing on the tree, that
exactly.
Lemon. Right? Great. Okay, so evolution then has got a totally different kind of strategy to revolution. Revolution's man-made. Evolution is emerging. Time is actually the architect of evolution, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So evolution then works basically by whatever works. If it works, then it goes on. It can go on successfully to reproduce. So here we can see on the slide emerging outcomes and rapid recognition. If you're managing an evolutionary system, you recognize if something good is happening or if something bad is happening. You know, if you're in Alaska and the wolves start coming close to the caribou, then you go for the wolves because you eat the caribou, you need them. Okay, so it's rapid recognition of changes. That's the key to the management, although management is the wrong word. So for revolution, we've got leading, you know, follow me, charge. You've got management, manus, the hands, for revolution. Evolution, you've got facilitation, and you've got animation. Animation is when you breathe life. To animate, animus, when you, to animate a system, you breathe life into it. Like God is reported to have breathed life into the clay figure of Eve, Adam. Okay, so revolution, evolution, how do they fit in with our change model, enhance, perturb, attract, excite? Well, there you can see. Revolution on the left is basically your top-down system. The man-made system in blue. Manage and seek goals, and on the right, evolution, you undermanage, and it's about avoiding limits. So there we can see them in context of the transformational process. There is a point when the change starts, or can start by revolution. It can start with a vision, but pretty soon the leaders have to change style completely to allow the system to go through its evolutionary part of transformation. And that's the problem with a lot of untrained executives. They can't keep their hands off it. They don't trust people enough to let them make mistakes. People have to make mistakes because nature does all the time. Most experiments fail in nature. So it's a fundamental paradigm of management we're talking about here. But let's now go and talk more in detail about the difference between revolution and evolution. So revolution, where did it come from? It's based on Newton. It's based on 1687, Newtonian Principia Mathematica, Leibniz, Descartes, the scientists of 300-400 years ago. That science works if you're looking at really big systems like steam engines or clocks, but it doesn't work if you're trying to make lasers. For that, you have to use quantum physics, you have to use quantum mechanics, and then you're into some very wacky logic. So the old Newtonian model, but the problem is the levers of change that you find in all the textbooks, all these mechanical models, these are taught to managers because a lot of managers are engineers, and managers understand levers of change. They understand this Newtonian, old-fashioned mechanical way of looking, but it carries a lot of baggage. And some of the baggage that it carries is basically cause and effect. Okay, it's caused by whose fault is it? Who's to blame for this? It doesn't admit of the complexity of the system. It's logical. 1 + 1 = 2. That's linear Cartesian logic. Okay. Synergy is defined as 1 + 1 = 3 million, or 5 million, or 10 million. In other words, the outcome is greater than the sum of the individual parts. That's synergy. That's what synergy is. And that's when two or more systems get together and complement each other. They can produce a lot more than was originally thought. In physics, they have the butterfly effect. The butterfly flaps its wings in Mongolia, and 3 months later, that sets up turbulation in the atmosphere and the environment. 3 months later, there's a hurricane in Texas. Try and find that original butterfly, the one who caused it, the one who's responsible for it. And you can see, when you look at the world from a non-linear perspective, a 21st century scientific perspective, then cause and effect goes out of the window because of the nature of complexity. So cause and effect, linear logic, is in the revolutionary camp. The leader's vision, the vision of the leader, using one mind instead of 10,000 minds, is stupid in the information age. If you can use all the members of Google, all the people in Google working on developing and changing the organization, rather than having some smart CEO, one single genius doesn't stand a chance against 10,000 very clever people. Okay?
There's an interesting example. There was a time before the internet, and there was even a time that Bill Gates from Microsoft did not believe in the internet. He thought, and he admitted, that it was just another fad that would go away. And luckily, Microsoft has a culture where Microsoft people can come up to Bill Gates and say, wait a minute, we believe that the internet will actually be the new way of doing business. We need to do this. We need to be there. And surprise, surprise, nowadays Microsoft is fully on the internet and even trying to dominate it.
Yeah. It's interesting the way it happened, huh? Mm-hmm. So the revolutionary system also assumes control. Control comes from contra rotulus, against the written scrolls, against the written plan. So revolution assumes that you can predict the future and it can be written. And it can be, people follow the book. Okay, that's what it means. I am not paid to think. That's what it means lower down in the organization. Contra rotulus, against the written scrolls. That's what the word control means. Revolution also follows a plan. It's got set goals, but the plan can act as a constraint and does act as a constraint to many people. I'm not paid to think, I'm not paid to be creative. It creates dependence among normal people, which is one of the bad side effects of bureaucracy and hierarchy. It makes people dependent upon leaders and bosses and so on. Politically dreadful, dynamite actually. And then a goal. So it's about goal orientation. What is a goal? A goal is a dream with a deadline. Simple. Okay? The dream is the vision, and we're not against goals, but we want you to see goals in the true perspective. It's only half of the aeroplane. It's one wing of the aeroplane. We want to look also at the other wing, which is the evolutionary side. And this is the creative side of the change or the transformation. And beautiful quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry: you cannot order the flowers to grow. You can't order people to love you. You can't order people to trust you. You can't order people to be creative. Think, man, think. Doesn't work. Okay? It's that's not, you don't manage creativity in that way. Okay? Creativity, innovation, solutions, providing solutions, totally different type of organization. So evolution, the dynamics, time is the architect of evolution. Time shapes the outcome of evolution. Evolution is a process, as we've said, of extinction and reproduction. Imagine your system is already pregnant with potential. It's got everything you need, and your job is to actually chip away all the things that are not part of that solution, that are not part of your job is not to stimulate or motivate the system, it's to liberate the system. Like the nurse's job is not to create the baby, it's to create a situation that enables the baby to be born. It's a liberation process of liberating creativity and innovation. It's a different way of thinking altogether. Of course, you've got to believe that people are naturally clever, and I believe most people are. Okay, so you assume then the system is pregnant with opportunity. As we've said, evolution releases diversity and mutations. That's nature's way of exploring. Mutations are nature's way of finding a better way of doing things. We are all mutated Negroes, according to some theories of genetics. We started our journey perhaps 100 to 200,000 years ago. The out of Africa theory, Negroes migrated north into Europe and then into northern Europe and across the face of the earth. And as they did so, they mutated white. They got whiter to deal with the colder climates, because white is more effective in a cold climate than black. Okay, so in the last section we started talking about evolution, going into it in more detail, evolution, revolution. What else can we say about evolution? Well, evolution, as we say, is constant experimentation. I took that photograph in Devon, and it's a very good example of two trees that seem to recognize each other, being there and avoiding each other. And you can see the gaps between the trees. If you look very closely, that's all the failed experiments. So they throw the branches out, and they do every year, but they don't find the sun. Heliotropic is the word, and it's a plant's reaction to the sun, to sunlight. And you can see that gap shows the limit avoiding strategy of these trees. They're avoiding each other, or they seem to in time. Time is the architect of evolution. So evolution is a process then. It's the waving trees do not create the wind. It's kind of a jokey thing there, but it's about outcomes. It's not about planning. It happens. It's about recognizing when something good happens, a lucky break. We get a lucky break. Outcome of events, not a cause of them. Evolution is also very unpredictable. It's complex. It's chaotic. We mentioned the butterfly effect in an earlier section. A butterfly flaps its wings, and there's a hurricane in Texas, or a tornado in Texas 3 months later. It's non-linear evolution. 1 + 1 = 5 is synergistic. So a small beginning can have a tremendous kind of outcome, with natural systems. You know, if you're driving your car and you happen to kind of pull out and not notice that there's a guy trying to overtake you, so a small turn of the wheel can kind of crash 50 cars on the autostrada. So that's the way nonlinear systems behave. Synchronicity. Look up these words for yourself if you're interested. Look up spooky, the word spooky in quantum mechanics, and you're going to find a really weird thing. You change one thing at this end of the universe, and a particle or a molecule on the other end of the universe changes as if it knew. And there's no physical connection between them. That's called a spooky effect in quantum physics. You're going to come up against a really weird type of logic. That's the logic of the 21st century. Also, it's self-organizing. Evolution is self-organizing. It self-selects or self-elects according to the environment. And it creates the best fit, or it enables the best fit to survive best in the environment. Okay, the best fit. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. To understand the way evolution works, here's a little question for you. Why do antelopes run away from lions? So if a lion appears, if the antelopes or the herder, the deer, see a lion, they all run like hell. Why do they do that? We often ask that question in class, and students come up with lots and lots of various reasons. But here's the evolutionary approach. Okay? If you're thinking evolution, it's very simple. The antelopes that didn't run away, in the past, millions of years ago, antelopes that didn't run away from lions were eaten and became extinct. It's very simple. The antelopes that ran away when they saw a lion, purely probably by accident, went on to be able to breed and survive another day, procreate, and that behavior also passed on to some of their children, and it still does today. So antelopes run away from lions because it's in them to do so from millions of years ago. The ones that didn't do that became extinct very quickly. That's evolution. Very practical, very pragmatic answer. So looking at our model then, thinking about evolution is pregnant with potential, okay? And look at the way things happen in nature. You've got, if you're a farmer, will invest in his seeds. He'll decide what the weather's going to be like this year, God help him. And he will invest, he will seed, perturb, he will nurture the seeds, that's the attract phase, and the fourth phase will be the harvest. So in farming and agriculture, enhance, perturb, attract, excite also can illustrate the way farmers work. And finally, the review of this section, the review of the two strategies of change. You've got revolution on one side and you've got evolution on the other side. Okay, we're going to look at the first phase now, the enhance phase, which is the important, like the break shot in a game of billiards. It's a very important kind of beginning step. The first thing is the objective of the enhance phase, and for the whole of this section of the transformation, is to create space and opportunity for yourself. When I drive my car to Breda, I do have a goal to get to Breda, yes, I do. But when I'm actually driving my car, my actual kind of tactic is my strategy maybe to get to Breda, but my tactic is to avoid every other car on the road, to avoid all the limits. And so I'm using the two in tandem here. So you can see with enhance, the enhance objective of the enhance is to try and clear out as many of the obstacles to the change or the transformation that you would prefer as possible. So that's, I hope that clears it up.
Yeah. The curious thing is that I changed my driving style according to you.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Because I remember I used to be 20 years ago the kind of guy who in the city, was trying to speed and get there as fast as I could and what's the shortest way. And then you once showed me, well, we can take a way that's a bit longer, but it's safer and it doesn't involve a lot of stopping. You just keep on driving. So I thought, wow, that's smart, because it's a lot more relaxing.
Yeah.
So now when I drive to work in Breda, I go on the right side, I do an average of 100, and I know I will get there on time, and I don't need to do all that fuzzy stuff.
Yeah.
So that feels more like an evolutionary approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you go through all the countryside as well.
Exactly. You see all
Rather
the
than the
beauty.
motorway. Yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so the enhanced phase then is about it's your brake shot. It's the vital brake shot in the billiards. The critical first actions can contribute to the butterfly effect that we've talked about. Essentially, you go where you look. So don't look for trouble. If you look for trouble, you'll see trouble. You know, if you're in a car crash, you don't look at the things that the obstacles that you might hit. You look for space. And all military drivers and security drivers are trained, look for space. If you look for space, you go where you look. So it's the way you look at the situation. If you look for problems, you'll see problems. If you look for opportunity, you'll see opportunity. So there's a mindset thing as well involved in the enhance phase. And we would say apply appreciative intelligence. It's like, look up Cooper Ryder, appreciative inquiry. Beautiful, beautiful way of looking at things. So apply appreciative intelligence and a win-win attitude. That means when I win, you win. And if rather than, you know, when I win, you lose. Win-lose is not, I don't think is a long-term good strategy to apply. Try a win-win. And we're going to show you a couple of things we got from the internet which are beautiful for that, to show you that. So that's the appreciative approach. You see, you can look at what you don't have, look at the whole, look at what we're missing, or you can look at, hey, wow, look at what we've got, look at what we've done. So that's look at the things that are good. What's good about the system? What gives it its life? What are we great at? Okay, and start applying that to yourself as well. Start thinking about what are you actually really good at? You know, what's good about the situation as well as what's bad about the situation. So what can we appreciate about it? And the other one is win-win-win. Lose, two donkeys pulling against each other. Nobody gets anything. And then one of them gets a bright idea. Let's work together. You know, if we go over together, then you get some, and then I get some, and then we both finish it that way. That's a beautiful illustration of win-lose. And back on the enhanced mindset, we've got lots of things here. How do you actually start to manage this? Well, first thing to note is people do not resist their own ideas. If you're in a change management program and you're having to deal with resistance, it means that people didn't contribute to that particular idea. You didn't involve them at the very beginning. So it's really important that you involve people. If you don't involve people, they don't commit. You don't get full commitment. So first thing to do in a change program would be change the reward system, reward people to work together and cooperate. That's the first thing. And then put them together. Okay? And then pick the people and put them together.
I want to give a small example from Ricardo Semler in Brazil. 25 years ago, there were a lot of complaints about the canteen and the food in the canteen. Now, what did he do? He asked the workers using the canteen to decide for themselves what kind of food do you want, which chef do you want to be cooking it, deal with it. Well, eventually they got their own chef. Now, it's very hard to complain about food when you actually decided that that chef had to make it. So you get commitment and you get no more complaints.
It's really simple. It's, people say empower the workers. That's not, because the workers, your company is already in the hands of the workers. It's already under their control. Come on, get real. So change the reward system, put the people together, open the information, open book management, give everyone the information they need to make the decisions they need to make. Open book, like in Semco, people know what the manager is making. They know what everyone's getting paid. Look up Semco Brazil, Ricardo Semler. Fantastic example of this stuff in practice.
And last May, I noticed at Zappos, Zappos.com in Las Vegas, they have a computer model now that is following all people's interactions and actions. So you can check on a daily basis who's talking to whom, what they're doing, and it's all made visible, it's all transparent. Because they realize that from those interactions they can learn together, well, how can we now structure this better to make it work better for all of us? So very, very smart system.
I didn't know that. Sociometry.
Yeah.
Sociometry Marino. Look it up. Very interesting. Third point then on this one is expect hits. So Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a strategy until they get hit. So in other words, expect hits. That's the perturbation phase. That's the phase that you're expecting. So you work out, what are we going to do? Not if, but when. How are we going to deal with failure? What are we going to do when people screw up? Are we going to fire them? If you do, don't expect people to experiment. They'll all stay within the comfort zone, and so on. So it's very important for a company to understand perturbation is an inevitable part of the process. Success itself is built on failure. And anyone who's successful knows that. Every champion knows it's about hitting the ball, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and hitting the ball 3,000 times before breakfast until your hands bleed. That's what makes Tiger Woods able to hit the ball 300 meters in a very good line. Success is built on failure. That's built on all the things that didn't work. So it's the attitude to failure and punishment and rewards in the system and in the values of the executives. It's really important that you understand failure is inevitable, and you learn more from failure than you do from success, actually, and so on. But also, you're expecting perturbation, but you're also expecting outcomes of attract and excite as well. This is the point you were making, Joe. So you're also looking to recognize opportunity and recognizing, hey, wow, that's an interesting idea, or this guy's got a really weird kind of approach. Let's have a listen to him. What's he got to say? Maybe he can teach us something we don't already know. So rapid recognition of new outcomes also is very important these days. You've got to have the information, you've got to have an open network. Andy Grove from Intel, who the old CEO of Intel Corporation, he used to eat in the canteen with everybody, and that's where he got all his good information. With me, I used to be a heavy smoker. I gave up 15 years ago, fortunately. Outside the building where all the smokers hang out, that's where I used to hang out with the director's secretary, some of the directors, the guys from the trade union, the marketing guy, the production guy. We were all the same. We were in the smoking club. And as a consultant, I used to get a lot of my information outside in the smoking group. Okay, so it's basically, it's picking up information about the way what's actually really happening in the organization. The next point is basically to do with your own attitude. You teach people how to treat you. Remember that. If people treat you well, you deserve it. If people treat you badly, you deserve it. So you've got to actually, it's empowering for you to actually to know this. These are about your own personal attitude. The way you handle conflict can build trust and respect. And that's particularly true in difficult situations. Like if you went to jail, the way you get respect in jail is by being able to defend yourself. The way you handle conflict is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your character. When you meet a shark, don't act like it's dinner. So don't run away from that kind of stuff. Face up to it. Don't act like it's dinner. If you swim away from a shark, he'll go after you. Don't run away from a bear. Another one is put your energy into what you're for, not what you're against. Walk away. Remember, win-win. Walk away from the stuff that is not, that you don't have to be right, basically. As an entrepreneur, I don't get paid for being right. So put your energy into what you're for, not what you're against. Don't start your sentences with yes, but. Try starting your sentence with yes, and. That's a good rule. And then finally, we just like to say, life doesn't give you what you want. This is goals. Life doesn't give you what you want. Life gives you what you're prepared to accept. If you're prepared to accept failure or second best, that's what life will give you. That's an evolutionary view. Giving you what you want, your goal, that's a revolutionary view. Giving you what you're prepared to accept or not prepared to accept, the limits, that's the evolutionary perspective, hopefully put into practice.
I wanted to throw in an example from a French company called Favi. And Favi makes automotive parts. And it's actually the only company in France, still in France, that didn't move to China or Vietnam, that is producing these parts. And the interesting thing is that the management of Favi has and had as a long-term goal, how can we keep working in this region for the next 100 years? How can we make certain that our staff and their children and the region benefits from having us here? So they're working with that kind of mindset. The mindset was not, well, what do we need to do when the market squeezes us out? Oh, well, we need to go to a country where wages are cheaper or lower. No, the mindset is appreciative, is what you're for. Let's stick around and do this for our company and for its employees.
Yeah. It's also called framing. It's how you frame a situation. If you look for problems, you'll see problems. So the way you frame something is really important. But the point here is life doesn't give you what you want. Life gives you what you're prepared to accept. You're always in control of it. Don't quit. Don't give up on it. That's the point, really, I think. Mm-hmm. So how you see it. Okay, well, we've been talking about change in the 21st century, actually, and now we're talking a little bit to the management of change, and basically about failure, and the attitude to failure and experimentation. And that's the evolutionary way of changing, is by constant experimentation, throwing things out. And these are some quotes we got from Silicon Valley. So you can see fast fail forwards. The startups in Silicon Valley, try everything and quickly kill what doesn't work. Learn from your failure, amplify what does work. That's the first quote. Second one is never fail to fail. That's from a Google executive. And then experience failure from a great book called The Network Always Wins by Peter Hinson, which is about don't try and outthink a situation. That'll paralyze you. Just go into it and see what happens. So it's very much a practical try it approach. It's a bit like the way I'm learning to use my new smartphone, actually. Just do it. And that's very 21st century. But failing is an essential part of innovation and creativity. That's the point that we're trying to make, and with change. Now, let's come on to how do you actually leading the change? Well, the question is, the word leading is probably a misnomer, but we're going to ask you a question. If you're in charge of a change, or you want to enable a change or facilitate a change, how do you do that? So we're going to ask you a question. Why is the ocean greater than the rivers? Give you some. We're talking about style of management. We're talking about a new style of management. Management in the 21st century. We're talking about network organizations. We're talking about organizations where people are free certainly free to move, and free to think and create and innovate and move around. Why is the ocean greater than the rivers? Think about water. Think about a liquid organization. And it then becomes very apparent the ocean is greater than the rivers because it's lower. And we think that's a very good metaphor for what we would call servant leadership. The ocean is greater than the rivers because it's lower. The rivers naturally flow into it. Now, in a network organization, which is very free, think about the kind of people you choose to work with in your group. Imagine you've got a problem in a network, an internet problem. Who are you going to go to? You're going to go to a guy my age, an old boy like me, or you're going to go to a guy like him, or a guy like who's even younger than him. You go to someone who's really like buzzing with the internet stuff, man, kind of thing. So you go to somebody that really knows about that. In a network organization or an organization like Google, that's exactly what you're free to do. You can just cross the floor. You don't have to ask his boss, and you go and talk to the guy or the girl about that particular problem. So your strategy is, firstly, make sure that what you're doing you're very good at. So go where your talent is. Talent is what you're good at and you don't remember learning it. Okay, so make sure that whatever you're doing for your living in the 21st century links in with your talent. Okay, and so make sure that you're good at what you do, and other people will know how good you are. You'll be judged not by a boss, but you'll be judged by everybody else. And when people have got a problem that falls within your area of expertise, or an opportunity within your expertise, they will naturally come to you. And that's the way network management, network organization happens. It's a self-organizing process, just like the rivers naturally flow into the ocean. So your strategy is actually, in your work, try to make everybody as successful as you can. Think about them and try to help them. So good guys in the 21st century do actually win. Okay, good guys win. Good people win. So we say at the end, if you help people to be successful and happy, you will naturally become the ocean. So when you're leading a change in the 21st century within the model that we're talking about, that's the way you do it. Now, leading a transformational change, what kind of role changes are we talking about here? And we've got them marked up. First role is the leader, the vision, the plan, the revolution. Set the vision, and then off you go. The perturbation stage is for a facilitator, someone who makes it easy for other people to be successful. Okay? You release the potential, you liberate the potential in the organization. The third phase is the animator, someone who you encourage these small groups that are emerging, you resource them, you protect them. That's what farmers do. They protect their plants from the weeds. You weed, you take away those aspects of the organization that are trying to kill these people's creativity. That's what you can do as an executive. Protect them, an animator, and then finally you become a manager again. Manos, you become a judge. You measure and you reward the success of the new harvest, of the new. So they're the four roles of a leader of a transformational change. Start as a leader. You move to become a facilitator. In other words, you disappear, you undermanage. You know, a good facilitator, people don't even recognize. It's like glass. They see right through you. An animator is an encourager, a supporter, but not someone who makes people dependent on them. And then finally back, you're the judge, you're the manager. So they're the four role changes. Now, let's take a look at the most popular change model in the world. I think probably...
Yeah, John Kotter's
it's Kotter, huh?
Yeah.
So there's Kotter's 8-step model of change. It's all over the internet, all over management literature. And we can see the 8 phases or 8 stages. First one, create a sense of urgency. Second one, form powerful coalitions. Third, create a vision for change. And then fourth is communicate the vision. Well, we would say who performs these things, and then empower action. How do you empower people? How does God empower you? God empowers you with this. The way to empower people is with silence. Empower other people is by not being there. So that's what we mean by undermanage. Okay. And then the next phase of So empower action is phase 5 on Kotter. And then 6 is create quick wins. 7 is build on the change. And then finally, make it stick, the last phase. When you put that to our model, in the sequence of Kotter, that's what we've got. First 3 stages of the enhance stage. And then we come to the perturb stage. So that we've got the communicate the vision, empower the action. The question is, and we say who? It's the question, who does this? Who should do this? Are we talking about top down or are we talking about bottom up? Do you empower action or do you allow it? Do you empower it or do you liberate it? Okay, it's a different kind of approach. Kotter is still very coherent. It's a beautiful model. But when you fit it with our model, then you have to ask the question, who does this? Who should be doing this? And maybe Kotter is a description of the desired outcomes, the things you want. And perhaps what we're talking about is a way to improve the chances of getting those outcomes using an evolutionary, chaos-based perspective. Maybe. So that's Kotter in the perspective of the EPAE system. Next one would be managing the entrepreneur. How do you manage cats? You manage sheep, easy. It's easy to manage sheep. Get yourself a good dog. A good dog will manage the sheep for you. Okay? You can take the sheep from here, Breda, to Amsterdam, overland, 100 sheep, and one shepherd can do it with a good dog. You've got a good dog. And the dog will do that, and you can take them overland. You don't, not on the roads, but across the fields. How, when you're talking about entrepreneurs and managing the entrepreneurial spirit, how do you manage entrepreneurs? The metaphor shifts. It's cats, it's not sheep. It's cats, independent. Imagine what happens if you put a dog among the cats. And that's what would happen if you tried 20th century management in an organization like Google. The cats would all they'd go to other companies. Okay, so how do you manage the entrepreneurial spirit? It's a different approach. We say 4 Ds: dream, the vision, make a deal, set a deadline, and receive delivery. So dream, deal, deadline, deliver. And you can see that within the phase space of enhanced perturb attract excite. Okay, so it works on managing the entrepreneurial spirit, and overall, what are the outcomes that you would like to develop or engender with enhanced perturb attract excite? We've got enhance the dream part. Basically, you start by enhancing respect and appreciation. You put people together and you build up their confidence and you treat them with respect. If you want people to respect you, respect them. It's very simple. So at the enhanced phase, you're building people up to go into into the unknown. You build them up for it. Perturbation, fighting, relationships, trust and respect comes from fighting. Where I come from in Liverpool, if you want respect from people at school, when I was at school, you got respect from being able to handle yourself in conflict. It's the way you could fight, being a good fighter, or being someone who's very courageous and stand up to a bully. So it's the perturbation is you get trust, and people own the problem, they own the pain. That's when you get the commitment in the perturbation phase. But that involves, you've got to change people's kind of perception of the situation. If you want to change a person's behavior, change the way they think about themselves. Change their role. So you're not an employee, you're an entrepreneur. If you've changed the reward system earlier on and rewarded people for success in the market, they'll start to think and act like entrepreneurs. In Semco, this company Joe was talking about, he gives a percentage of profit, I think it's 28%? 27% every year. He gives it as a gift to his workers. That's dollars in the pocket to guys who are earning, $10 an hour, $15 an hour. They suddenly get a bonus of thousands of dollars in their pocket based upon the performance of the organization. I'll tell you, those guys can all read balance sheets.
Yes, I wanted to give an example in the Netherlands of buurtzorg. Buurtzorg is an organization that takes care of care at home, at people's houses, very often elderly care. And for a few decades, the care system in this country and in other countries has become very rationalized, where a person efficiently gets a timesheet every morning and it says you need to go see Barbara at 8:03, and Barbara gets a shot of a medicine, and that should take you 3.5 minutes. Then you drive your car towards George. Driving the car towards George will take you 11 minutes. You arrive at George's place, there you change a band-aid, etc., etc. One thing after the other. Now in real life, you go to George's place and George just fell. While you enter the house, you pick George up. George has a little wound on his head, but you say, well, I'm just here to change your band-aid, but I will make a note on my sheet so that the next nurse, next morning, would come and take care of your head. But George says, I have a problem here right now. I have a bruise here now. What can you do about it? Sorry, I have to go. So this happened in the market. A company like Buurtzorg said, wait a minute, our nurses, they are not robots, they are not machines. They are people whose passion it is to make others independent, to give them great care, and for that we need to spend time with them and check what they need at that time. So we have reframed the way they should work from just a paid operator to somebody who cares and who gives a service via also the passion.
Yeah, that's great. That's the commitment. That's what we mean by commitment. Changing a person's role will change their behavior. Change them from being a nurse who works for a boss to someone who makes people healthy or helps people to stay healthy, and they think about themselves that way, broaden their role, automatically changes their behavior. That will happen. We've got that down in the perturbation phase of that model that you're looking at. The attract phase is when actually you set a deadline. If you want to excite people's behavior, you set a deadline. And at that phase, that's where goodwill and ingenuity and creativity has appeared and is starting. People are starting to work together, goodwill and ingenuity and creativity. They're starting to try out different things together. The synergy is happening and the system is moving through the transformation. And it finally gets to the excite phase, which is the delivery phase, some people call it the destiny phase. Entrepreneurs, I was born for this, so the destiny phase or the delivery phase, and that's where you've got your regulation, reputation, and you've got your relationship building. So at that final stage, basically reputation is making people proud of what they've done and giving them a fantastic kind of name to live up to. And then the whole thing starts again. So we want to emphasize this is not an ending. This is not a candle that you light and it burns out. This is a battery that you actually can just keep recharging. So we're talking about a system of change and transformation, not a one-off, but something that goes on and on and on and on. It's a cyclical process. Okay. We've kind of hinted about spirit and about goodness and doing the right thing and being moral and ethical. We're going to leave you with one final kind of question. Okay? Very simple. When you see a name like Smith and Company, or Jones and Company, or McKinsey and Company, right? We ask you, what does the word company actually mean? Company. And where does it come from? Where do you think it comes from? What does the word company mean to you? Okay? So Jones and Company, Smith and Company, McKinsey and Company, Rubens and Rowley and Company, what does the word company mean? Where does it come from? Okay? See how we're empowering you with our silence here? Where does the word company come from?
Don't Google it.
Don't Google it, yeah, think it. Company. Okay. Let's go back 400 or 500 years. There's a place in Italy called Prato where you can go to it. It's near Tuscany. I would advise you to go there if you're interested in business history, which we are. There was a guy there called Francesco Datini, not Francisco, it's Francesco. I made a spelling mistake. Okay, Francesco Datini. And he was a 13th, 14th century merchant. 15th century, 14th century, something like that. He lived there 400 or 500 years ago, and he controlled a very big business network. He built up a big business empire. And in that town in Prato, this is the word company. Where does the word company come from? There's a dining room table. There's a dining room in a castle in Prato. You can go there. It's still there, the Palazzo Datini. And in the castle, there's a dining room and there's a big table there. At that table every night, Francesco would sit with his wife and with all of his agents. His agents would come from all over Europe, I think also from China. He had agencies all over the world, a big entrepreneurial company, an organization. And they would sit there, and every night, just hold that a minute for me, Joe. The company would panini. They would break bread together. That's what the word company means. Together, panini, bread. Together, bread. Breaking bread together. Okay? Now I hope that gives you a kind of an idea of the spiritual component. There's a spiritual component. I'm not talking about religion here, but there's a spiritual, definitely a non-linear, non-logical component to a successful business organization. And breaking bread together is what the word company actually means. McKinsey and Company, sitting down and breaking bread together, is something you do with family and with friends. And it's one of the reasons we developed teamwork 2 million years ago. It wasn't just because we shared the meat. It was because we used to hang out together, and I would fight to protect you, my brother, which is what the military do. Soldiers do not fight to kill the enemy. Soldiers fight to protect their buddies, to protect their friends. That's why they fight. And, so, lest we forget, managing a change and a transformational exercise involves a moral, values-based commitment. Values shape the behavior. Vision shapes the direction. Values shape the behavior. And, we've been together as partners working on this stuff and working on these theories for 22 years now. We're still good mates. I was best man at his wedding and quite recently. And when I meet people in my business, I look for a long time working relationship. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed that.